So the new pack, Indomitable Pride, and the new balance is out, and I figure it's a great time to go over the Master Duel meta and what I expect it to look like for the next month or so until we get another balance and more packs. And I want to focus on the decks that are either meta viable, like the decks that were good last format, and the decks that got buffed or got hit by the ban list. Obviously, we're going to focus on the new cards from new packs and stuff like that. And if there's a deck in here that you don't see and I left out, feel free to tell me in the comments or ask me about it. I'll do my best and answer what I think about that deck as well if it's not here. But first, let's get to the new deck that everyone's hyped about from the new pack. And of course, we're talking about the Transcendosaurus. Okay. Now, here's the thing. If you were to play the Transcendosauruses as a pure deck, like as just the Transcendosauruses, I'd put it here, bottom. I would advise against that. However, there is a card from the archetype, the spell like Xeno or something, which is insanely cracked. If you're playing a normal Dino strategy, it adds a vanilla Dino or a Dino tuner monster, which it adds a Scrap Raptor, I believe, from the Scrap engine, and then you get to pop a card, so you get to pop the baby and you add your best starter. Like, that's actually insane. So if Dinos, Dino DNA, Misk is still here, you're probably eating good from that. It's definitely maybe even one of the Dinos might even be one of the better rogue tier decks now with the Transcendosaurus support. But obviously I don't. You can, if you want, you can play the Transcendosaurus by themselves. I just wouldn't expect too much if you do so. But as an engine in Dinos now, yes. And okay, let's get to the actual thing you probably were here for, which is the Superheavy Samurai. So, Superheavy Samurai. I'm gonna withhold from putting in a position right now. So this deck is obviously insane combo potential. If it gets to play the game, you pretty much win the game. It sets up a almost unbreakable board. You need board breakers to beat it, and even if you do have board breakers, this is a deck that runs 15. It has to run 40 monsters, so you know there's gonna be a hella hand traps in their hand, and they also draw cards during the combo. So you're still gonna have to beat their hand traps, even if you have the perfect board breaker to deal with their board, and they have follow up because they draw cards during their entire combo. But the issue is with Super Heavy is that there are a few pretty heavily played cards that prevent them from playing the game. One of them is Maxi, which I know it's oh cool, this deck loses to Maxi, what else is new? Well, other decks that lose to Maxi, they can run these cards called Call by the Grave and Cross the Designator, which Super Heavy, because it's a Super Heavy deck, you can't do that, so you immediately have half as many Elves to Maxi as any other deck does, only being 3 Ash. And beyond just Maxi, there's another card that's probably going to be played in this format. It's probably going to be one of the better hand traps this format, which is going to be Draw and Lockbird. And unlike the Maxi, you don't even have Ash to negate Draw and Lockbird. You just have no outs to draw. So yeah, that's 6 potential turn-ending hand traps in every deck, which you probably cannot even interact with most of the time with either of them. So because of that, I mean, definitely it's going to be a good deck, but I don't think it's going to be it's definitely not going to be the best deck in my opinion. I'm not sure if it's even going to be guaranteed to be tier 1, but it definitely could be the potential. There are people who might see better combo lines than I know, the standard lines that I just know right now. Another cards from the new pack, the Gold Pride cards. This is the most up in the air for me because at the same time that we're getting the Gold Pride cards, we're also getting Terratops to 3, which is actually a very big deal for Gold Pride because Gold Pride has a in-archetype rank 3 it's like a Rhoda for spells that, because of the existence of Terratop, now you have a 1-card free special summon of your in-archetype rank 3 for engine. So that's actually pretty big, and it allows you to cut down on Punk engine. I think the best version of Gold Pride is going to be Gold Pride P.U.N.K, so conveniently also I didn't include P.U.N.K in here because I'm going to lump in P.U.N.K and Gold Pride together, since I think that's going to be the best build for both of those decks. And we'll see how big the Terror Top, because this deck didn't really have too much success in the TCG and OCG when it came out around this, and like, I don't know, the power level in Master Duel is pretty high, and I will say the deck is better in Master Duel just because of the Terror Tops stuff. But yeah, we'll put it in here for now, but this is the one that's mostly up in the air for me, and it's probably the one that I know the least about of the new cards, unfortunately, so if you know, probably going to be a bit wrong on this, so feel free to come back to me when I inevitably am. Nemurelia. Remember that Decade video where he was trying to preview the Nemurelia archetype, and all he could find for topping deck list was one random photo of like a Japanese dude's deck from like a logo or something, and how that was the only competitive topping deck list that Nemurelia ever had in its existence. And now that it's in Master Duel, if you include Master Duel tournament tops, that screenshot might still be the only top this deck has. So yeah, I don't know about that. Not to mention, this deck is hella expensive. Why? Like, this deck has like what, 6 URs for this? Like, this deck, like, really, bro? Okay, whatever. Yeah, this is probably gonna be the weakest deck from the new pack, and it's I don't think it's gonna be good. But you know, feel free to. Admittedly, I did not invest too much thought into how to lab out Nemurelia, so if there's a better way to play it, you know, please let me know, and please know the other commenters, or please let the other commenters know. And finally, there's a bunch of new support, and by a bunch I mean there's 2 cards of new support, but it's for Mannadium, and it's actually insane. Like, they're getting Visa's Amritara, the level 8 Synchro, and they got the Mannadium Trisukta, the level 6 Synchro, okay? Those are insane combo enablers. The deck was previously only 2-card combos before, and with like defined choke points, the deck is pretty much combo-wise, I think the deck is complete now. Obviously, it's missing a couple copies because of the Master Duel balance. It's missing a couple copies of Fenrir and Raitsov, which is, if you're playing the Scareclaw engine, that is a bigger hit since that's less starters for that. Although, you could also still run the Hero Lives engine, and Prisma, and that engine is still completely legal in Master Duel. And the only real thing this deck is missing now, compared to like the TCG and OCG, is I think the Crimson Dragon, the level 12 Synchro. But that's more of an end board piece. That's not like a combo enabler. So this is Master Duel. You can literally just use another generic extra deck monster on the field, as opposed to like Crimson Dragon summoning your 4th level 10 Synchro. But yeah, this deck is actually, I think, it has the potential to be tier 1, and I think it's better than Superheavy Samurai in my opinion, just because it's more resilient, because it's not restricted to only monsters. You can run good spell cards. You know, you can run these cards that out Maxi and Droll, whereas Droll kills both these decks, but Mannadium has 3 outs to Droll, and Superheavy Samurai has 0 outs to Droll. And now we're heading into the best decks of the previous format, and obviously Brand and Despia. So Brand and Despia did not get hit on the infamously did not get hit on the ban list, and if not accounting for new cards, I think Brandon would have been solidified its position as the best deck. If all we just got was the ban list and not a new selection pack, I think it still has the potential to be the best deck in the format, since all of Branded's hardest matchups from past format got hit hard on the ban list. Dragon Link, the deck that plays the most Bystials, that's neutered from the ban list. Purrely hits severely hard from the ban list. No need to worry about outing an X-Play Nard anymore. A Rise Art Kashtira, like what the hell even is Kashtira at this point, right? So yeah, Branded's didn't get hit, all its competitors got hit. so it has the potential to be the best deck. Might be better than Mannadium. We'll see, because Brandon has weird with the non-engine. It requires you to run a lot of engine pieces, and then most decks are running 60 cards just to fit in all the engine and stuff. So sometimes you're not going to draw your maxis, you're not going to draw your Droll as often versus these super combo decks as some other decks potentially might. So that might be a downside. Then again, Brandon has the potential to actually break through these boards more. It also, I don't know if there's extra deck space right now. I feel like there isn't, but Super probably is an option against Mannadium and Superheavy Samurai, which obviously Brandon is a fusion deck, so it can take advantage of that. And yeah, board it does run Thrust better than most decks, because not only, unlike most decks, you can access any part of your main engine with Thrust as well. So Thrust is both engine and non-engine, and then you can get the specific board breaker you need. And then so Brandon has the potential to where it can actually outgrind Super Heavy with board breaker. Even if you can't kill them, Brandon can still outgrind them when going second. So it's yeah, it's maybe not the most convincing best deck, but it is up there in tier 1 at least. Mathmech is another deck that didn't get hit from the ban list. That was one of the best decks in the previous format, and the advantage of Mathmech is this is the deck that can run the most hand traps in the game. So it can run obviously the maxi and the Droll, and on top of that it runs like 16 plus hand traps pretty easily. So you can, because here's the thing, these combo decks aside, if you don't hit them with maxi or Droll, one hand trap isn't going to stop your combo. You're going to be able to combo through that. Now if you draw 2 or even 3 hand traps together, then you have a much better chance of stopping them. And Mathmech is the deck that has the best chance of doing that, because it has the most room for non-engine. And it also, its board is still good enough to win or one. Like Super Factorial plus Terahertz is more than enough to beat all these decks still. Especially, and again, it also, its hardest matchups, Kashtira and Dragonlink, are got hit significantly more than Mathmech deck, which is not at all. So yeah, I'll put it as one of the best decks of the format. And Labrynth is, so Labrynth peaked very high in October. It was like the second or best deck behind Purrely pretty convincingly, and then since then it didn't really get hit. Like it just lost like a pot or two maybe, and then the one lap oh no, Stolby Torby went from 3 to 2. What a large hit. But it just did not do very well recently. Like in the last Duelist Cup in December, it got outplaced by Runic Stun. Like there were more Runic Stun in the top 100 than there were Labrynth. Like that was a major fall off. And I'm not too exactly sure why, although maybe one of the reasons was because, again, with Dragon getting buffed, and Dragon also has a good matchup against Labrynth. There's just no deck really had a good matchup against Dragonlink, is like what I'm gathering. So a lot of them benefited from Dragonlink getting neutered, which was, we're gonna get to that soon. But yeah, I'm putting it here because this is also a trap deck, and when super combo decks are the best decks in the format, as opposed to something more mid-range like a Purrely, then Labrynth's requirement to be running like 10 trap cards that are very bad going second is a major liability, when other decks like Mathmech can run 16 hand traps, or Brandon Despia has ample room or does run many board breakers. Labrynth doesn't have room to run either of those, so going second with this deck is harder. But I mean, the barrier is still legal, so it's still impressive going first. It's just yeah, the going second in a combo heavy format is rough for Labrynth. And Vanquish Soul. So Vanquish Soul performed really well, and Vanquish Soul did, compared to branded Labrynth and Mathmech, Vanquish Soul did get hit more than those decks at the very least, although not compared to the decks that we'll be getting to. It lost one, there can be only one, which is, oh no, one copy of the Floodgate, shipped are still at 2. And the bigger hit is the Fender hit, since Fender was actually like a big part of the Vanquish Soul engine, since it added attributes. Now you can still run Fender. It might still be correct to run Fender, one Race Off, and one Rise Heart. Although that gets awkward because then you can't use Fender to add an Earth monster. Even though most of the time adding Fire is better, it's just sometimes if you don't have extra Earths, you might not want to summon the Fender, otherwise you're lacking an Earth attribute in hand. And then it's like you could run Scareclaw Clash to mitigate that, but Scareclaw Clash Kashtira is like not really that great of a card to draw. It's like it's literally just there for an attribute that you can add off Fender, so it's like, eh. I mean, I think it's still gonna be good. It's gonna be one among the best decks. I'm not quite sure if it's gonna be in tier 1 as long with the other ones before. I'll give it the benefit of the doubt because it performed well. It performed really well. Like it actually outperformed Mathmech. So like putting it down here just for losing one Fender seems like a bit extreme in my opinion. And also, it runs Shifter and Tier can be only one, and is insanely good. Those are still insanely good cards in the format. So I'll keep it there. Dragon Link is not staying anywhere near that. It's gonna be topping, I think, at around tier 2 now. It lost so many cards because the Hit the Baby hit so many cards from the deck. Like Safer became bad, Chaos Space became mediocre. You're not gonna play Black Dragon anymore, so now your best starter, you reduce to 3 of the good starters, which is Black Metal Dragon. And then going second is rough now. Bestials it has a benefit that I think Bestials are still going to be good this format. And obviously if Bestials are good, then the deck that plays Bestials the best and most often is still gonna have some viability. Since the deck does not have the most room for non-engine. But if Bestials are good, then Bestials count as engine and non-engine, so that it helps with going second. And against Branded, Mathmech, and Labrynth, it's still going to be good. It's actually kind of hit or miss against Mannadium, I think. You can hit the Rune Heart or the Scareclaw, or like the Scareclaw Rykard out of the grave, I suppose. Although that's just really just trading for one body, which is like the Vicious Astrolabe. And they could easily get another one down there. They could also summon it back with Dissipator, so it's kind of weird, and it's not too great against Superheavy Samurai, which is the two decks that are going to see a surge in usage from the selection pack. So yeah, this deck's still really good going first. It's good at playing through hand traps still. But don't listen to what people say. The deck has a strong combo game through hand traps. It's just through hard removal and going second. That's when the deck not having the extra bodies it struggles more with. So it fell off. Tier 1, arguably the best deck before, it fell all the way down to, I would say, to the middle, or maybe down the middle of tier 2. And it's going to be joined with Purrely, so damn, this deck has lost so many spells, and there's no Pretty Memory, or there's no Purrely Noir inside. And without that and only one Delicious Memory, this deck is like you're never making Noir with this. Like your best bet to make Noir is using the fucking Ghost Trick cards, which is like, is that really what you want to be doing, right? I suppose it might be worth, if you really want to cope, you could play a Ghost Trick Purrely and then just focus on the Ghost Trick part to make the Noir instead of the UDF, and then yeah, have that. It's gonna be like, it's not dead. It's better than Wave. It's better than the majority of rogue decks, I think. So it still might be settling on the bottom of tier 2, but it's hella inconsistent right now. And yeah, it was rough. Speaking of rough, Kashtira, Jesus Christ, this is at best, like, if we're talking about in a vacuum, Kashtira deserves rogue. It's like inconsistent, and the power level is like not super high. The only saving grace, I think, is that if people are less focused on Kashtira, they're gonna not be as prepared for a Rise Heart, and a Rise Heart at the end of the day is still Macrocosmos, which shuts down every single deck above it, as you can see. So if people aren't prepared for facing against a Rise Heart, then you can catch free wins going first. So going second now is it's a bit harder. You lost a lot of you lost your Birth and your Fender, which are like, your Birth is honestly the best card in the deck. So Yeah, that was a major hit. It's like a Rise Heart or nothing now, and you gotta run Kashtira Ogre, or you gotta run more of the bad Kashtira cards, which like the deck was already lacking starters and monsters, and now you gotta run like max copies of Rise Heart just to get consistency. It's like, yeah, it's don't I wouldn't prepare for Cash. In my personal opinion, I wouldn't prepare your deck to against Cash. You know, if you face Cash, just be it's gonna be like a flu thing where it's like you're not gonna cut max seed because flu exists, right? You're just gonna occasionally you're just gonna take the L when you queue into it because you're not prepared for it because it's Master Duel. You can't prepare for everything. Speaking of can't prepare for everything, it's this deck, okay. Stun. There's gonna be stun is still gonna be played. There's just nothing we can do about that. Floodgates are limited, but they're still, at the end of the day, they're still legal. And you know, if you can put 40 limited floodgates in the deck and still have a full deck of floodgates at the end of the day. So yeah. The biggest hit was probably like lack of part of the mice, so there's like not a one card auto win that stun has, although all the bear statues and fossil dyna are still legal, so they can make up for the lack of inspector border. Oh no Synchro zone, man. If only Messenger of Peace wasn't printed like 10 years earlier and does almost the same thing. Yeah, it's not gonna be good. It for sure cannot win going second against most of any deck now, but you're gonna, someone's gonna summon Fossil Dyna set 5 against you with a nightmare, like a Clockwork Knight, and you're still gonna lose to that. So yeah, that's why I still put it in Rogue. It's still a deck that could cheese out wins, which is the entire point that people played for. Cheesing out wins. This grass is just gonna represent all the 60 card grass piles that relied heavily on Chaos Ruler. Obviously, no Chaos Ruler now. That's a massive hit. That was a big part of your 60 card of the 60 card deck's engines. Right now, you're missing 5 mills plus an extra extender, which is huge. There's really no card that can replace the production that Chaos Ruler had now. Like the closest thing is probably something like Minerva, which is not even close. It only mills 3 and it doesn't even add any cards that it milled, and it doesn't double as another extender. Like that was massive. And because there's no Chaos Ruler, stuff like Ringleworm is less desirable. Stuff like Assault Synchron is worse. Yeah, it's gonna be somewhere down here. It's gonna be. You're also playing a 60 card deck in fucking Master Duel in the maxi format, so like that's already rough. And grass is at 1, by the way. Lyrelix Tri-Brigade or Bird Up. I think this deck is underrated. I think this deck is better than all of these decks that got hit. This is like nobody plays this deck, so I can understand, but I mean it's still good. Like it has a combo that's good enough to win turn 1, and with Sending Oath it plays around board breakers. It has Apex Avian and Simorgh Gligo, which it doesn't have in the TCG, so that's that's nice. And it has a lot of room for non-engine, so it's like you can run the Drolls, you can run 12 or up to 15 hand traps even, so it's like similar to Mathmech in that regard. And yeah, it's just a solid deck right now, and it's solidly better than the biggest losers or the decks that got hit the hardest from the ban list. And I'll discuss some of these later. So there's also the other version of Tri-Brigade. So there's 2 versions of Tri-Brigade. One of them is that I think are legal, but I'll lump them together since I think they'll largely be around the same placement on the tier list. One of them is Tri-Brigade Sprite. So technically Tri-Brigade Sprite can do all the same combos, but the issue is that you have to run bricks, like because Nimble Weaver is a 1, you have to run Nimble Mamanga or a Nimble Sunfish or like stuff like that. I believe the most common builds for Tri-Brigade Sprite are running 1 like a Mamanga and a Sunfish and a Beaver, so like 3 Nimbles, and or like they're running one angler, one Mamanga, and one beaver, I believe. Since the Nemurelia is a beast, that's a tri-type, that works. It's just that those are basically garnets now, and I'd never liked the idea of running garnets in the deck that heavily depends on going through that combo line with every combo. But I mean, that deck is still obviously good. Clearly that deck is good. It still was able to top Duelist Cups. And the other one, now we have a Scareclaw Tri-Brigade, sort of Scareclaw Tri-Brigade. It's more like it's more similar to the Mannadium combo decks, where now it all relies on a Hero Lives and Prisma to get its plays going. So it's like it's more of a combo deck like Mannadium, instead of ending on like 4 different level 10 synchros, it ends on like a bear, and then instead of level 10 synchros, it has stuff to back it up like Revolt and Twin Saw. So again, solid deck. That version does not necessarily have as much room for non-engine as say a Delirious Tri-Brigade build does, but it does have a higher ceiling. So take that for what you will. Whichever, would you rather have the deck that has more non-engine, which like Tri-Brigade Sprite, or would you rather have the one that has a higher ceiling and it's able to extend and has a better end board, which is like the Scareclaw Tri-Brigade? Oh yeah, I guess I should put them over. I'm still unsure where to put Gold Pride. I'll give Gold Pride the benefit of the doubt that it might be as good or better than the biggest losers, the 3 big losers from the last man list. Although I think these Tri-Beast combo decks have a bit more to offer. And I think the best version of Sprite decks, at least right now, is still the Live Twin Sprite variant, just because it has the room for the most hand traps. This is basically like a bad Mathmech deck, if you will. It plays very similar. It runs as just like a shit ton of hand traps and non-engine, probably even more than even Mathmech can. It's just that its end board is arguably not as strong as Mathmech is. It plays through hand traps decently well, although it doesn't play through Max E as well as Mathmech does. There is a line Mathmech can do that can end on Super Factorial only giving 2 draws, whereas if you get Max E with Life and Sprite, you really can't end on anything relevant, so that's still an issue. But yeah, if you have like 17 hand traps and you have trolls and you have you know, possible stuff like ogres or bells for the Labrynth, you have enough non-engine to tech against the top X-Men format. So yeah, and this Quem here, so this is not branded Despia. This is the other branded build. I think it's underlooked. It's branded Synchro. So the reason to play branded Synchro over branded Despia is, one, hardly anyone plays it, so nobody knows how to play against it, and people see a branded card and they will hold their ass watching for days, thinking that you will activate branded fusion, when in fact, when you're playing branded Synchro, you don't even activate branded fusion at all on your turn 1. So yeah, some people just hold Ash and look silly for doing that. Also, the other reason is Verte is legal, and Verte is like actually a ridiculous card. Verte sending Brandon's Fusion to make a Mirror Jade is 2 interruptions by itself. It's because you have the Mirror Jade advantage, and then Mirror Jade sends the Rimbrum, which can then revive the Albass that you send on your opponent's turn. And that's with 2 monsters, okay? You do that at the end of your combo. You have all your Branded Synchro plays before that. And Branded Despia, for all its positives, it can't really take advantage of Verte as well as Branded Synchro, since, you know, Branded Fusion opening, they lock you out of making Verte. Verte is more of a backup plan than it is your main combo line, so I mean, it can still use it, but it's not to the extent that Branded Synchro does. You know, you can have like stuff like Seals plus Mirror Jade with like both Branded traps and like a Dispater in the grave. Like this is still a quality deck, and if Bistios are good, because this deck does not have room for non-engine, but if Bistios are good, then it's like Dragon Link, right? So it has the potential to still be good against the meta. I guess since we're on the topic of Bistios, we can talk about Tearlaments, and Tearlaments was a winner from this new ban list. It didn't like gain anything back or anything crazy, but again, you hear me say this a lot. Yeah, Dragons was an awful matchup for it. You know, the deck that ran the most Vicios, and if Dragons seems to decrease in play, then yeah, Tearlaments it's gonna be better now. But that I would have argued that Tearlaments was almost like it was rogue at best, bordering on sometimes unplayable last format depending on what you queued into, just because Dragon was everywhere and that was like a 90-10 matchup for Dragons. So yeah, now that you're not going to face Dragons as much, you also are not going to face Kashtira as much. Kashtira is also an auto lose, not just Kashtira the deck that makes it rise hard, but Kashtira the monsters such as Unicorn and Fender are also annoying as hell because you rely so much on Kit Kalos, because every other part of the deck is neutered, so Kit Kalos is like the one thing the deck still has, which is like Kit Kalos is a super strong card, but when your deck relies on that so much, it gets it kind of gets targeted really easily by Fender and stuff like that. And obviously with the hit Defender now, that's going to be much less common, so you don't have to worry about random people slashing cash in their decks and then like having a Unicorn rip out your one Kit Kalos or having a Defender banish your one Kit Kalos. But yeah, overall it's I mean, it might be a stretch to put it above these, so I'll put it it's certainly, I'll put it above Purrely and Kash, because Purrely and Kash got hit quite hard on the ban list. But yeah, it lost its worst matchups basically, so it can only be improved from where it was in the last format. Next four. So the next four, these are basically the Runic variants, the non-stun Runic, the combo variants. Runic Sprite, Runic Fur Hire Sprite, Runic Nemurelia, and Bestial Runic. Generally, I want these things. I think these four decks are grouped generally around the same power level on the tier list, and like they're on the same placements, and they all share similar strengths and weaknesses. Obviously, the big weakness is that they're a Runic deck and they don't have room for non-engine, which is a big issue when combo decks like Superheavy and Mannadium are part of the meta, since you need non-engine to be able to play against those decks going second. And if you only have room for like 9 spots at most, then yeah, going second is rough this format for them. I will say that maybe Bestial Runic has a little, maybe a slight advantage, just because Bestial Runic obviously runs Bestials, which Bestials can count as non-engine against some matchups, like against Branded, Mathmech, and Labrynth among the top decks. Your engine is actually good non-engine, whereas the other three, they don't have something like that, so that's a positive. So maybe, but Bestial Runic is also, I think it's the lowest power level of the other Runic decks. I think the order goes something like this, and Runic being the best just because it has the best, it plays the best in the max seed, right? It doesn't auto lose the max seed like the other three Runic deck does. And then you can decide between Fur Hire or Sprite Runic, or just pure Runic Sprite. Pure Runic Sprite has the room for the most non-engine, so it has the most chance to be able to tech going second cards versus the meta, whereas Runic Fur Hire has possibly the highest ceiling of all the Runic decks because of the drawing 6 cards per turn I hear is pretty good. And Bestial Runic is still missing a lot of cards. It's missing like SP Little Knight, which is huge for the deck. That's like honestly by far the most important card in the extra deck, and not having that is like a big deal. Also not having Legacia, a legitimate level 12 Synchro to go into that you can make with a Bestial and a Coral Dragon. So yeah, but yeah, if there's too much combo, then it's gonna be bordering on in the rogue tier. But I think I think it's fair to put in something like this, like group all these Runic decks together and put them somewhere like near the bottom of tier, of tier 2. I'll give the benefit of doubt to the for hire Runic, I suppose, or Runic for hire as it's supposed to be said, I guess. And yeah, Hey, guys, did you know there was another hit to Flunderies in the format, on the ban list, Positive 1, and people are playing Droll now, so yeah, nah, fam, I don't think that's a Zoodiac. Yeah, this is so the only reason I'm putting this here is because Terratop is coming back, so some people are suspecting that Terratop into Invoker to get a zoo name is good. That's not good. I do not recommend you do that because you're a deck that largely does not care about Max C, and by playing the Terratop package, you're playing into just a bunch of cards in the format that you don't have to. You play into losing the Droll, you're playing into losing it to Max C way more often than not. Getting, especially a Zoo Monster from your deck, is not even that good by itself, because Ratpier triggers on normal summon only, so specialing it with Invoker is not even that good, so yeah, it's I wouldn't I wouldn't. Basically, this deck is going to be the same as it was before, like Summer and Rogue, but also my PSA is to don't run Terratops in Zoodiac. This ain't 2017, okay? That's not a good play anymore. When that card literally got banned because of that. Like no, don't. It's not all that. Speaking of not all that, Mikanko. Yeah, it's blind second. I think it's going to be a bit rougher in general, just because there are combo decks in the format. Like going second against all of these top decks in the top row is like atrocious, right? But you can't really board break Branded, because Branded has cards literally on every part of the field. The back row, the front row, the monsters, the graveyard, the hand. Like, the interruptions are everywhere. If you let them set up and you just let them go for first for free every time, that's not that's not gonna bode out well for you. Also, playing the Super Factorio every time is rough, because Super Factorio is much harder to interact with for a go second deck than monsters are. Vanquish Soul doesn't really even commit to the field. All it does is get plus 5 on you and draw 3 cards when it goes first. So you don't ideally wouldn't want to do that. And also with Droll in the format, Droll is hella annoying for Mikanko. Like, Droll is actually hurts Mikanko incredibly hard as a going second deck for no reason. And yeah, it's rough. If you want to play going second, like, I'm not sure if this is even the best going second deck anymore, to be honest. And next up, okay, so Scareclaw. I want to talk about Scareclaw for a little bit. I think Scareclaw is underrated. Now, granted, I don't think it's better than Mannadium, and for what it's worth, I don't think there's a reason that to run Scareclaw over Mannadium anyways, other than, I don't know, that you like it. But Twinsaw is like a really good card. Tryhard plus Twinsaw is a board that still beats actually most decks when it does going first. It's just going second. It doesn't have room for too much, not as much non-engine as other more mid-range decks, even though its ceiling is not too high, so that it is still plays like a mid-range deck, just doesn't have the benefits of the non-engine slots. And for a deck that plays the Scareclaw engine, Mannadium plays the Scareclaw cards probably better than the Scareclaw deck does, which is kind of sad. And even for Twinsaw, I think Tri-Brigade or Scareclaw Tri-Brigade utilizes Twinsaw better than this pure Scareclaw does. So yeah, it's okay, but at the same time, I'm not sure there's really a reason to play Scareclaw. As sad as that sounds, even though the individual cards are good, the individual cards are better used in the other decks, unfortunately. Rikka Sunavalon, Rikka. This is like the same. I just included in here, and it's like in the same spot it's like been the entire time. Like for every tier list that I've done, I think it's been the same position for every format. It's for months now. It's like this deck that just wins going first, and might struggle going second, but you know, just having an auto win FTK deck going first that plays through many hand traps, I guess is fine. Although maybe not Droll if Droll's heavy in the is popular. So like it's like mid tier 2 that I've always put it in like this entire time. I don't know if that's even right or not. There's like not enough people even playing Rikka Sunavalon to like really know its position. Yeah, it has. It's like a wombo combo deck, like the Mannadium and the Super Heavy and stuff like that. Although it might be a bit more fragile because it's dependent on seeing one specific choke point in Loci. So, or Sunseed, Genius, Loci. So when you go second, it's probably a bit more easier to stop than stuff than like a Mannadium or a Super Heavy. Speedroid. This is actually Speedroid. I think Speedroid is pretty good. I think Speedroid honestly is like a decent contender for like a tier 2 deck. It might either put it below the Runic decks, or might even put it like near the top of like the Runic decks, like in the tier level. Like, it's solid. Like it's a deck that can run hand traps. You know, that's a common theme with like the more viable decks in tier 2 is that they can run good non-engine for the format. So if you can run Droll, you can run like 12 to 14 plus hand traps. That's better science, since then that gives you a better chance to stop these top decks up here. And yeah, it's good enough going first that where Baron plus double Crystal Wing plus a few hand traps, that's decent. That's good enough for that's solid for a tier 2 level deck. Just like Adagnister. Adagnister is just like in my opinion, it's like a worse Mathmech. It has a higher ceiling than Mathmech does at the cost of some non-engine, which I think the Mathmech endboard is good enough to win, which is why I value the more non-engine over a higher endboard. Although this is still a fine deck. Maybe it struggles a bit more going second, but at the same time it runs 3 circular, so really is that really true? Like we'll put it somewhere around here. These 5 before Gold Pride, I think Gold Pride is like the cutoff on this tier. I know this is like kind of visually hard to describe, but like these 5 are probably around what I would consider the top of the tier 2, and then the bottom is like on a bad day, or like if the format's not conducive to them, like these decks like Cash and Purrely, they are at a risk of like falling into rogue tier basically. And speaking of rogue tier, yeah, Micro and Moye. So Longyang went back to 3, and what's it called? Desires went from 2 to 1. So really, you swap 1 Desires for 1 Longyang, and that's it. It's Sword Soul. I still think Sword Soul is kind of mid. It had a bit more merit pre this selection pack, in that Sword Soul has a decent matchup against Branded and Vanquish Souls of all decks, since Sword Soul is like, with all the tennies and stuff, you can actually play through Vanquish Souls turn 1 and potentially kill them, provided they don't have there can be only 1 or Shifter. Obviously, you know, it's another issue with Sword Soul is Sword Soul does not have the room to. You want to run tennies to maintain consistency. You don't have room for much non-engine, so that's a problem. You can maybe get away with running Droll at that, but you don't have room for like very much more than like maybe like 10 or 11 hand traps at most. So it's just like what I struggled with adding. And then like my Sword Soul build, I've gone through 42, 43 cards just to have out to max C, and then I still have less hand traps than like I could fit in like a Speedroid deck, or even a Tearlaments deck. And Tearlaments isn't a deck known for being able to fit in too many hand traps either, but it can fit in more than Sword Soul apparently. Yeah, obviously Protoss versus Branded, and they can actually play somewhat going second to Branded, but Sword Soul can't really play going second if Super Heavy Samurai full combos you, and it probably can't play into Mannadium either. So yeah, it's gonna put it around here. And yeah, there's a lot more tier 2 decks than before. But the main thing was when Fountain went to 1, I overestimated how much that would actually affect the Runic decks. The Runic decks were still pretty fine. They were actually last format from tier list, I had all these Runics, I had all of them in Rogue instead of tier 2. But the Fountain hit to 1 didn't really change how they played at all. So frankly, that was probably an overreaction. The Runic decks are still fine and they're still very good going first. They just have the problems going second as they always do, but that's not really as much to do with the balance, and that's more to do so with the meta. So yeah, the bottom row of the tier 2 you could argue could also be in high Rogue or bottom of tier 2. Like either way, I wouldn't be too bent out of shape on which one you would argue. And there's like a lot of viable decks in tier 2, actually, more so than I thought there would be when I started this tier list. So yeah, and obviously I could be completely wrong with this. So when I'm inevitably completely wrong about this, come back to this video and let me know in the comments. Just give me just talk all that shit and give me shit for being completely wrong about this. Especially if Nemurelia has multiple tops this format, like it's over. And again, if there's a deck that isn't mentioned here, then that probably means that I think it's either in like low Rogue, bottom of Rogue tier, or even lower. But obviously, let me know if you think otherwise.